Oh no, that is definitely not what I want. Hey, I see Kathy. Kathy, how are you today? I appreciate your patience here. I am working through some technical difficulty as per the usual. Can you hear me out there? Checking in, checking in. Can you hear me out there, Kathy? Well, I guess I shouldn't harass my guests. If you can hear me, fantastic. I appreciate you joining in. I'm working through some tech as per the usual, but I am not giving up today. So I appreciate you being here working through this with me. I just turned the music on. Maybe I'll even put the fantastic sights over there. I think I'm gonna stream straight to. I'm gonna stream straight to Facebook from here. A bit of a problem I was having last night. It's definitely still happening. Definitely still happening. I want to do this so bad. I appreciate your patience, all of you out there. I suspect that the story behind this is going to be so much fun. Let's do it this way. Oh no, not over there. Get out of there, little guy. I need you over here. So, what I'll do in the interim is I'm going to share this link on this side. Appreciate your patience. Always a blessing, always fun. So yeah, as always, it's funny because I start this process about an hour ahead of time, right? I start this process an hour in advance. I double check, I triple check, I make sure I'm live. And somehow well, it's not somehow. There's a number of things that I do each day just to try it, just to be iterative, that would reasonably give me a different result each time. And man, I swear I've done something different every time. And yeah, it's been a blast. But I should probably learn my lesson. I think I would have learned my lesson by now, right? Oh, maybe not though. I don't know. Yeah, I'm enjoying it though. I'm still enjoying it. And when I stop enjoying it, that's when I'll stop doing it. Until then, here we are. Yeah, I appreciate you guys being out here with me. This is my favorite part. I really enjoy the iterative perspective. Now, everything along the way, just one step at a time. So what I'm gonna do is, I am gonna set this up so that I can go straight to Facebook. On it, working on Let's see. Let's see. We are working through this. So if I stream directly from to from that instead of yeah, there we go. I guess that instead of messing around and trying to do it straight through Facebook, I should have just yeah, man, that's crazy. All right, everybody, I guess we got it figured out. Let me double check and make sure my audio sounds good. I should have just plot twist. It was 33 minutes ago, but let's start this way. All right, everybody, I guess we got it figured out. Let me double check and make sure my audio sounds good. Hey, everybody, welcome to the midnight run. I am getting everything squared up here. Thanks for those who didn't give up on me. I've gotten some cheers and jeers from those in the crowd. I want to shout out Samantha Park. Anybody joining from Facebook or Zoom, thank you so much for being here. Um, I think we got it all figured out now, which is pleasant to say the least. What I was saying earlier was it looked like I was live, but apparently I wasn't live. I could see it on my side, but thanks for those who didn't give up on me. Cheers from those in the crowd. Fantastic. Shout out. Fantastic. Okay, all right. So, hey, everybody, welcome to the Midnight Run. So today, what we're gonna do, what I wanted to go over was one thing that I was talking about a little bit earlier, um, and I think it's super duper interesting, right? So, what I found out today, so for anyone who hasn't been following me for this week's journey, um, I am reviving my social media platform, right? My social media presence, and that's in the pursuits of a goal called being a unicorn agent. So, what is a unicorn agent? A unicorn agent is someone, a real estate agent or broker or what have you, depending on what state you're in, right? Wherever you're joining us from, a unicorn agent is a person who understands real estate investors, what they need, and how they can be supported, right? And so, as an agent and an investor myself, I find that I have a perspective that, I thought that many real estate agents and brokers and such would have. But the crazy part about it is that that is not the case in most cases, right? Whereas I have rental properties and I've done fix and flips, and I'm looking to do even more things as part of the sub two community. What I found is, what I found is that that's not necessarily everything, right? And what I wanted to do, hey Amber, how are you? Welcome. Thank you for dropping by. I know it's for a lot of people it's usually pretty late, um, but thanks for dropping in. Make sure you drop a comment in the in the chats below, and then please hit that like, that love button. It really helps. Um, I found out about that, about how it works. I'm trying to go over some of that here today. One, this is for all you out there in YouTube land are going to watch this years from now when my wife and I are super duper famous. You watch if you watch it here live, you'll have some bragging rights, right? And yeah, so one of the things that we found out that one of the Marines that I work with shared with me the other day was that there's this whole thing about how the Twitter algorithm works. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say the Twitter algorithm, what we're talking about is the way that social media decides how to show you things and what to show you. Right? Let me make sure that my team on Zoom, are you guys getting everything just fine over here? If you are, please drop something in the chat. If you're not, then we'll work on it because you guys are super important to me. Although you're all important, my crew over here in Zoom is fantastic because that's actually most likely that's like my crew from Sub 2 with a few others in there. Wherever you're joining from, I appreciate you. Make sure you let me know where you're coming from, right? Because I definitely need to know for my own purposes and the assessment of where I'm going to put things. But what I want to show you guys is I want to show you one of the cool things, right? And let's see if obviously I haven't actually even pursued Twitter during this revival, but what I wanted to get into is these really interesting posts that one of the Marines showed me, right? Twitter algorithm. And the idea that I had, and the thing that I want to talk about is this, right? For any of you real estate investors out there, any agents, anybody who's looking to expand their bubble and grow their sphere, right? If you've got a small business, if you've got a big business, if you've got a hobby, if you make art with seashells, right? Like whatever you do, If you're selling it, if you've got e-commerce, there's so much value in social media. It's ridiculous. And literally in this last week of just me fumbling my way to success one baby step at a time. I have learned so much in this last week. Like it's crazy, and it really reminds me. It really reminds me of my early days as a social media representative for the Marine Corps. Right. I used to run this. I used to run the Marine Corps based Quantico Instagram. We also had some other platforms, but was um, one of the things that I learned was like how to leverage the system, how to get people to see and understand certain things that we were trying to put forth. And so what I wanted to bring to your attention as we dive back into the real estate game here is that no matter what you do, and it matters to me as a real estate agent and an investor, but no matter what you do, the idea is that you can leverage these platforms. And so for the longest time, how these things work was like almost unknown. We were really guessing, right? How did we know what to do in certain posts? How do we know what is going to get our content in front of the people that we care about, our customers or our friends and families, or the people who are going to advocate for our brand, right? And Not twist. One second, let me check here. I got a little comment there in the chat in Zoom. Hey, Samantha, thanks for joining from Camp Lejeune. I love that. Thanks for being here. I did finally get the Facebook up, Samantha, so I really, really appreciate you because it's people who will stick around and listen and just stay on top of me that really help motivate me because although I'm intrinsically motivated, it always helps to have a friend out there, right? Um, but in your journey, whatever that is, you are leveraging social media is like one of the most advantageous things you can do. For starters, for the most part, it's free. But for the longest time, a lot of these things were secrets, right? We didn't really know how they worked. And what's occurred here, I think it was like April at the beginning of April, Twitter released its algorithm. And what it digs into is there's a bunch of reposts and explanations about some of the actual code within it. But the point is this that there are there are very specific values that Twitter prescribes to how how what ends up on your feed gets there, right? And One second. Alexa, stop timer. There's very specific functions that allow that to get on your feed, right? And so I'm going to switch gears for a second. I'm going to talk just straight to the camera as I'm going through here. What that means is that if you want to get some content in front of one of your customers, there's very specific things that you can do, right? And going through some of this platform, right? Some of these items here, some of the things that you can do, we kind of really understand what they are already. In particular, one of them is pictures, right? There's a specific value that adds, and I need to get to the one that I was shown um, this past week. One of the Marines in my office. It was like the top down, no joke, like the the snapshot view with exactly what those things did. Um, and yeah, what it one of the things is if you add a picture. Oh, I don't necessarily want to get into the actual code right now. I'm not. I might be okay, but I'm not that good, right? Um, yeah, one of the things that it gets into is like by putting a picture into your post, into your tweets, it gets a times two, like a multiplier, right? A times two for reach. And then when you have a link in there, it decreases your reach. And all those things come together to say this that as you begin to grow your platform, as you work through that process, imagine this that Twitter's system, and this is 95% of their cheat sheet, right? Twitter's system um, provides you that output based on what you're doing and what you're not doing, right? If you get likes, you get 30 times a greater reach. Retweets get 20 times here. Images and videos give you 2 times. Um, but imagine this for a second, that every other social media platform that you've ever used works somewhat the same way, right? And so by leveraging the knowledge that you can, by leveraging the knowledge that these systems are pretty straightforward. They have a pretty straightforward function for how your content gets there. You can leverage those things, right? So I thought that was super interesting as I went through this. I've definitely done some more. I've done some more some reels and some pieces on my story, and I think that it's very relevant to what I do, but it might be good for you too, right? So that's your little nugget in the box there. It'll be good for all of you out there in YouTube land. But I know what you came for, or hopefully I know what you came for. Let's roll into some stuff here, right? So today, what I'm going to be looking at, I'm going to be looking in Wilmington, right? In Wilmington, North Carolina. As I said, I'm an agent in North Carolina, and so it helps me out to be able to look at some of these things. So this is really two dual purpose. One, I love that there's new people joining in. Make sure you like and share. Please take a moment right now, share this to your page. Let people come on over. If they've got questions about real estate, I want them in here, right? It's Friday. I've been on the stream all week, just except for yesterday. I wasn't here yesterday, and that's okay, right? There's I've been here all week and just drop it in to see what value I can bring. And I've gotten some good questions. I've had some people drop into Zoom and ask some good questions as well. And I just want to add some value here, right? 1 second here. I actually have some. Give me one moment. I'm gonna run off real quick. I have some food in the oven, and the last thing I want to do right now is burn my house down before my wife comes back. So give me 60 seconds to turn that bad boy off. All right, I'll be right back. Right back. Don't go anywhere. Okay. All right. And I have returned. Get the camera back up. And we're back. Okay. Hey, thank you for your patience. I had to take the braised beef out of the oven. Really looking forward to it. Smells good. I definitely wanted some, but the show must go on, right? And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking in Wilmington, North Carolina today. If you're joining me from wherever you're joining me, if you have questions, feel free to drop in, right? Feel free to drop in and ask your question. If you're interested in dropping in on the Zoom where you can actually talk and I can hear you, although those on Facebook can't hear you, I can hear you on Zoom just fine. So you feel free to unmute yourself. If you can't, let me know. All right. So what I'm going to look at today in Wilmington is I'm actually going to be looking for a very, very specific type of problem set, right? And so when we're talking about real estate from an investor's perspective, I like to view it as what person needs my help the most. Um, because there's a lot of things that I can do that other people can't or won't do for whatever reason. Um, and when I think of the people who need my help the most, many other investors also can see those people. They become visible because of the problem they have and how our system works. And so if you didn't know, maybe you know somebody who might have gone through it, but in the event that someone misses their payments for an extended period of time or there's other circumstances, but what we're going to be looking at today is pre-foreclosure and foreclosure. So many of the investment softwares that I and other investors use will specifically identify and show you a number of characteristics, right? So in Privy, which is like my absolute favorite system here, it's a system that I like. I would say just like a little bit more than MLS. Um, in Privy, there's a bunch of quick filters here, which really gives you a snapshot of some of those fine functions that as an investor I'm looking at, I'm targeting, right? So you have your absentee owner, which are those persons who don't live in the property, right? And we could talk about if you have questions about how those things are identified or how we can tell as an investor how we can tell some of these things. Hey, drop it in the chat. I'll definitely answer the questions as we're going. But Some of these things are what we're looking at. And each of these different platforms, although they do different things, they all have many of the same functions because that's what we're looking for. What we're going to be looking at today is pre foreclosures. A pre foreclosure is one of the best functions to look for as an investor for two reasons, from my perspective, right? A pre foreclosure is a notice that someone has had a clear and specific problem. They couldn't or didn't make their payments. And so, what that tells me is that there's something wrong to some shape or form, whether they got sick, life happens, maybe they forgot, maybe they've already passed, maybe they are having issues with the bank, or whatever happens, it doesn't necessarily matter. The conversation for me, though, is that I may be able to help this person get back on track, right? And there's a lot of discussion about like how you actually get after pre foreclosures and identify some of those problem sets. I think I can. I think I'll dig into some of those and further zooms, unless there's people who want to know. I mean, if you ask the questions, I'll probably answer them straight up. But I do want to dive. I want to dive straight in. Right? So again, if you're curious, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. Right? Let me know because I will answer them absolutely. Cool. 1 second. Get this thing sorted out over here. All right. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at, we're looking at foreclosures in Wilmington. We're looking at foreclosures in Wilmington, North Carolina. So in Wilmington, North Carolina, in this zip code, we have 48 foreclosures across the city. And, that might sound like a lot, but as you get into the bigger cities, those numbers go up. But it's just such a small part of the entirety of the real estate out there, right? And so as I get into it here, let's see what we got here. As I look at it, and I like to use PropStream for this part because it gives me essentially like a snapshot face information. In here, we have 48 properties. There's a bunch of different ways to look at this, right? You can show all 48. I could get super deep into that space, but what I really like to do is I like to just get a feel for what's in the timeline, right? What There's one piece of information on here called the recording date, right? And if you've never seen these before, that recording date means that is the functional date that this property was identified in the foreclosure process. It says, hey, you were 30, 60, well, in this particular case, it's 90, right? The notice of default is usually given 90 days after that missing payment, right? After 30 days, yeah, it's going to be a credit hit, but it's not necessarily fully defaulted just yet. And that 60-day threshold, you're probably going to get a little bit of the tingles on the back of your neck. You're going to get some more of those calls, but you're functionally able to get things back on track without too many problems, right? At that 90-day threshold, the bank panics, or some banks panic. And what they do is they go out and they reach out to a law firm in many cases, right? Some of them reach out to a law firm, and what they'll do is they'll say, hey, look, you're lawyers. We don't really deal with that. We're banks. We focus on making money and lending people's money out, right? You're a lawyer. Do us a solid. Here's a list of properties who are 90 days late on their payments. We want you to go and sell their homes so that we can recoup those costs, and then we can turn them back into cash producing assets, right? And so the trustees will go forth. What they'll do is they'll provide a notice of default. Bam, that's that date right there. And then the goal is that they're going to be able to facilitate the process of taking that loan to foreclosure. And it is not in foreclosure. That home is not foreclosed upon until the notice of default is given, and then the process is followed through. And for some period of time that will pass later, they will at some point they'll provide at some point they'll provide a notice of sale, like an auction date, and they'll tell you, hey, not only are you in foreclosure and it was identified that this period, but now we're telling you that this is when we're going to sell your house. And so until that point, until that day, in practice, you could make sure to help those people, identify them, communicate with them, and try to get them into a position where you can figure out what they need, right? And so a lot of people try to focus on making money in this particular space. And so I'm a sub-2 student, and that's really not what that community is about. It's not really what we're about, right? We really focus, although the money is nice, we really focus on helping people. And so I'm a military investor, right? I'm investing in the place that I intend to live. I live and I breathe around Camp Lejeune. And what I've seen in this area, whether you're on the north side or you're on the south side down toward Sneed's Ferry or wherever you're going to be, there is a lot of opportunity to help people. whether because they don't know or they were taken advantage of. And I've seen the stories all the way across the spectrum. There's a lot of opportunity there. So knowing how to help somebody in pre-foreclosure, knowing the ways that you can save them from pre-foreclosure and reinstate that loan, that's a whole different Zoom and story for itself. For those of you watching this later, or even for those of you who are with me now, drop it in the chat if you want to know about that. Right, we'll follow up on that, and maybe I'll end up on a tangent and we'll get to it later. Maybe later in this particular Zoom, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Right. Okay, so on Zoom, how we sounding? How we sounding over here? Sounding pretty good. How's this sound, Samantha? Can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down? You let me know. Okay. Hello, my love. My wife just got home looking cute, coming from the from the gym, and she got me something. The food is definitely done. I did not burn down the house successfully. It's very hot. Don't burn your face. Don't care. Okay, so we're gonna roll right through here. What I like to do, got the electric caffeine for the evening. I'm going with the Boost Sour Apple Energy Drink. So there, every month, every month, your county will have. So side note, let's drop this up front, right? Because this is important for all of you watching this. Some people are thinking like, how do I do this, Paris? How do I do this? Oh, let me see. I got a message over here. Absolutely fantastic. I appreciate that, Sam. Thanks so much. Okay, so for all of you watching in the future, the question is like, Paris, what are you doing? You may not have access to Privy or Batchley's or PropStream. If you want to talk about it, I have access and I'm willing to share it. Like, let's talk about it, right? We'll figure out what makes the most sense. But every month, someone may be entering that 90-day threshold and getting that notice of default. And so what will happen is the county will release the notice to all persons. This is public data, right? All these systems are running on public information. And so I have a friend, a Marine whose name is David, who I work with or adjacent. He doesn't work in my section. And David's a go-getter, right? So shout out to David when he sees this stream. Maybe he'll join us tonight. I should probably text him or something like that. Maybe I'll tag him on Facebook. But yeah, yeah, I haven't tagged him yet. He's taking care of family. You know how he does. He's a family man. Um, but yeah, there's a guy that I work with named David. And what David did is David went down to the county. So in most cases, that list is functional. Sometimes that list is not released electronically, right? A lot of these systems, and especially some of the older cities, aren't really fully electronic just yet. And so those lists are only maintained downtown, and sometimes it's even more restrictive, right? You'll be in a position where the list is downtown, and then you have to go in. They take a scan of your ID, and then you have to leave all electronic devices outside, and you can only go through with a pen and a piece of paper, and it's a total nightmare, right? Well, David, right? Shout out to Dave. Maybe I shouldn't tag him because maybe the feds are watching, right? But Dave goes and he calls enough people and he talks to enough people that they decide to give Dave the electronic version. Now, step one. I've talked to the county, right? And I specifically was told, no, you have to come down here. But Dave is such a bulldog. He's also a really, really nice, like a fantastic dude, right? Dave goes and he talks to the right people and they just give him everything. So Dave gets the list of pre-foreclosures at the top of the month. He says, "Hey Paris, I've got the list. I'm gonna send it to you. Let's run these numbers and help some folks." And I'm like, "Dog, you are just how can you be so simultaneously so aggressive and then so generous, right? Like he's a guy, right? Hopefully, maybe I'll have him on the stream one of these days on the weekend. We're gonna go door knocking this weekend, but I'm off my tangent. Hey, I see my boy Chin out there. Hey, what's going on, man? Thanks for coming. I see Kevin Dickinson. Hey, what's going on? What's going on? Please, please, please like the stream, like the stream, like the stream. I was talking about the Twitter algorithm and how all these social media platforms work. Um, the likes are the highest value, right? So people are like, oh, if you comment, you're getting engagement. That's great. Negative, negative. Please like the streams. Love it. I think there's as you go through the gamut of like the social, the reactions. I think they're actually more positive until you get to like angry reacts, which is a whole different thing. Like too many angry reacts actually has a positive effect, but don't angry react my stuff unless you really want to. I mean, your best life, right? All right, so this list on PropStream, it has the recording dates here. Now I could export this list, pull it into like a data set, and then turn that into a list that I can scrub through that way. It would fairly, for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. But I'm gonna work within the system here. Um, hey bub, could you maybe make some rice when you ever get a chance? Thank you. Let me know how it is, because I'm curious. I haven't had any because it was hella hot. It smells really good. I'm jealous. I'm mad because I made it. I haven't had it yet. Um, Let me know how the mushy boys are. Okay, so we're gonna check out this first property on the list here, right? And so as a snapshot, we see some of this data here. 359 Golden Road. For any of you, let me see. I see a message out here in the Zoom land. One second. Let me see. Are these websites only available to agents? From Samantha Price? Hey, Samantha, no, these websites are not only available to agents. I happen to be an agent, but these websites are for public, right? You can use them. You can go download, or you can go pay into Batch or Privy or any of those things right now. I love them. Um, I've been using these before I was an agent, and it just so happens that they do many of the same things that I love and do as an agent. So I have access to the MLS, but I'll tell you honestly, as an agent, I I use some of these more than I use my MLS access. And maybe I shouldn't say that out loud, but I already did, and it's too late. Right? I hope that answers your question, but keep them coming, right? Hey, for all of you guys out there, oh, I see my Kenzo Benzo like the stream. What's going on? My wife, she's off to my right, snacking on some braised beef. But no, these websites are not only for agents. You can go and log into Privy. You can have access to batch leads. You can have access to PropStream as well. Each of them is coincidentally they're about the same price. Each of them costs like $99 a month. Um, I believe they're more than worth it, transparently, right? I think they're absolutely worth it, especially if you're just getting started, and you're trying to learn some of those things. So in the sub two mentorship, Privy is where everybody is right now, and transparently, it makes a whole lot of sense because Privy does some things the others don't. They all have their ups and downs, positives and negatives. They have different user interfaces. They have different, very specific niche things that they can do. Um, we can talk about that in a bit, a little bit later in the Zoom. But no, it's not just for agents. You can have these right now. Yeah, Privy. Privy is where it's at. I like that right now. So, in this case, 539. So what you'll see is sometimes when you're pulling this list, some of them have pictures, some of them don't, and usually the ones with pictures, they were previously listed on the MLS. So at some point since that house was created and built, it was probably listed on the MLS, depending on how old it is, right? And if it's older, then it's a lower likelihood, right? So we're going to look at this first one, 359 Golden Road in Wilmington. There was a notice of default. It's in pre-foreclosure. And the reason what it says is it says doc type. And so the document type here is, in most of these cases, there's a notice of default. And it's specifically because the system, it pulls public data, like I said, and it was able to identify the particular code for this document. This one was recorded 6/1/2022. I'm actually gonna go try for one for in 2023, right? And why would I look for one in 2023? Right? There's a lot of conversation and discussion we had here, and there's really two main schools of thought. You could go for an older pre-foreclosure notice that more than likely has approached and potentially passed its window for redemption, or you could go for a newer one that got its recording date recently, and then they might be interested in having a conversation. And so the older pre-foreclosures have probably been called multiple times, and the newer ones are probably being called multiple times right now. And so there's a balancing act of really what you want to attack. I like the idea of focusing on the things that are going to have an auction. So I like to really focus on what's going to have an auction date in the next 30 days, right? The idea there being is that it's an unfortunate psychological function where people in foreclosure, where for whatever reason they may find themselves in this position, they kind of do like the head in the sand thing, right? Where they're like, I didn't pay my thing for whatever reason. Maybe they're having a hard time. In many cases, it's a valid, reasonable, principled position, right? But they just don't do anything about it. partly because they don't know any better. They don't know what to do. They don't know what the steps are. And even worse than that, the trustees in many instances are not really functionally helping them, right? The trustee was hired by the bank to facilitate this process of foreclosing the home, taking it back, getting the old owner out of the place, and getting it back to the bank. And so, yes, they're supposed to be helpful, but it seems it's a bit of a conflict of interest if you were when looking at it in a particular perspective, right? So, 359 golden rule. Let's open this bad boy up. So, in Privy, I can see a bunch of information, and like this is where it's really cool. And if you have questions about Privy or Batch or PropStream, let me know. Like I love talking about these. That's a whole nother thing, right? But in here, I can see so much information. I can see the basic functions of what this property is, and a lot of this information is the MLS type information. Many of these pull from public data, but some of them, especially Privy, Privy has relationships with the MLS and the boards in the specific regions, and they pull that information straight from there. So now I'm looking at this data here, looking at this set. I'm looking at 359 Golden Road, Wilmington. I know they got a pre-foreclosure notice in 2022, right? And so this one is at least 6, 79, 10 months old in this particular case. So you might be thinking, okay, this is a pre-foreclosure notice. You said that when they get a pre-foreclosure notice, it's because they didn't pay for whatever the case is. It's normally they're 90 days late. How is this property still showing up 10 months later? Well, it's not a perfect science, right? Because this person may know some things or maybe not. Hey, for all of those joining me now, I gotta hit it again. I gotta hit it every time. Please, please, please like and share the screen. Take this stream, take this moment to share this to more people, right? I want to get as many people in here for this golden nugget, this golden knowledge that I'm trying to drop for you guys. And then hopefully, if you have any questions, I can answer them. See Jonathan Cruz in the chat on Facebook. You saw all the great and amazing capers online. You're just a great person, right? You're too kind. I don't know why you would say that. I don't know who that guy is. I'd like you to introduce us though. Okay, so but in this case, this is a 10-month delay from when it was originally notified to now. And there's so many different things. I have 7 ways that I could stop a foreclosure, um, based on the circumstances that that particular seller is facing, right? That is a definitely different offline conversation that is so important to what I can do. That unfortunately, well, one plot twist: agents are not taught all these functions in school, right? It's a 90-hour course that I took to become licensed in North Carolina. I've spent the last 5 years with my wife fighting for our lives and struggling to learn every she laughs, right, fighting for our lives and learning every little scrap about these things that we possibly could, right? You will learn more doing it than you will in any course. And so if you're looking to potentially become an agent, for some of this information, that might not be the best answer, right? That might not be the best function. It might be more valuable for you to work with a real estate agent, a unicorn agent like myself, that knows these things, that has access to these resources, and does what I call walking the line, right? When we talk about walk the line, I love to use this example. Um, I see Jonathan Cruz. Need to get this on TikTok. The networking there is amazing. Hey man, you're. It's funny that you say that, right? Because I've streamed about 20 hours this week. One of the things that I'll be doing this weekend is chopping these things up into little pieces. I got a whole marketing plan, my boy. You know I'm a marketing and public affairs guy, right? Like that's my jam. So this is my test bed for the month. I'm gonna chop this all up, and then you see me on TikTok. I'm gonna be flooding your stream, and you better like it. Make sure you like it. I would love if you see my content, you share it back to me. You say, "Hey, I saw you on TikTok," and be like, "Oh, that's great." Um, Thanks for being here, man. Make sure you like the stream. You also got me off topic, so thanks. Off my train of thought. But yeah, you might not necessarily want to become an agent or real estate agent, for the sake. My TikTok name. Oh gosh. Okay, so you put me on the spot here. So my TikTok name was at Gunny Talks Money, but I'm pretty sure now it's Paris Phones Home. My wife is gonna check. She's gonna get back to you. We'll be back. It's Paris Phones Homes. Is it dot Paris dot? So Paris dot phones dot homes, just like my Instagram down there. no videos. There's nothing on there, right? Because I was like, I'm gonna do this eventually, but I'm not gonna do it yet. And this is the time. So go follow me on TikTok. I will definitely be posting more of this content there. And then as I get more comfortable with how these systems work and how they interact with each other, I'm gonna be doing it more, right? I've got two phones, one for marketing and business and things like that. And yeah, you'll see me active, right? So invest in me or follow my page and you will get exactly what you need, right? The more people that like and follow me on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, I'm also on YouTube at Paris Caper Social. Search it, it's down there at the bottom. Um, I'm going to be chopping up a lot of this content, putting it on there. What I'm also going to be doing is I have some specific things that I'm doing where I call other agents to explain some of the more creative things that I do. Um, yeah, I appreciate you, man. Jonathan Cruz for the win. Going to be sharing everything. So let's see. In the Zoom group, I see, are there any main red flags with looking through a foreclosure profile? So when you say foreclosure profile, Sam, what do you mean by foreclosure profile? Are you talking about like this specific vision, this snapshot in whichever platform I'm using for foreclosure, pre-foreclosure? Is that your question is there something that I see in here that I should be alarmed by? Or do you mean, is there something that I see in here that makes me excited and wants me to go after? I know that was like two different questions literally at the same time. So you let me know, okay? I think I understand what you're asking, but I'll get after it. So the question that Samantha Price asked me over on Zoom, and if you're not in Zoom, you're missing out, you're missing out, you're missing out. I love you guys over here on Facebook because that's where like that I have algorithm, right? That's good stuff. But Zoom is where you get the good stuff. And so the question is, are there any red flags that you might see looking through this profile? And so step one, the biggest red flag functionally, like as an investor, someone's like ring the alarm, like call the cavalry, is that this has a notice of foreclosure. This is already in red flag status, Sam. We're already there. Plot twist. The house is on fire to some degree. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be saved. There's so many functions to save it. But this is the way that I know that there's a problem for starters, right? If I'm looking through here, some of the things that I'm looking for, and I'll get to it. This is good, right? When we're talking about foreclosure and red flags, some of the things that I'll look at is I will look at the mortgage. And this is important to me because, I grew up in Philly, right? I grew up, my family, for all you, they're going to see this, right? They're going to see this after. We had an interesting life that I'll talk about in like other Zooms, and I got to talk about that at definitely a different time. But um, what I look for is I look for the loan. I look at the loan, and the loan docs are public information also, right? But I look at the loan, and I look at what the payment is. And so the idea is this. For every loan, there is a monthly payment of principal and interest, right? And if you have a mortgage, usually you'll have taxes and insurance wrapped up in there. And so I like to look at the loan amount, and I look at what the loan activity is. And one of the huge red flags for me, honestly, if we're talking about red flags, is if I see cash taken out of the property before foreclosure, right? So the notice of foreclosure for this one was what, June, January, March, May, June something. If I looked at the mortgage transaction in history in here and I saw that there was a big, excuse me, and I saw that there was a big cash out refi or something like that, that would be alarming to me, right? Also, specifically, one of the things that I avoid in here, and this is another one, this is a red flag for me, and for the most part, I stay away from these almost entirely. Not even almost, like, I don't touch these. It's a reverse mortgage. To me, a reverse mortgage, one, does not work with the systems that I like to use when we're talking about creative finance, subject to and seller financing and things like that. Yeah, you guys both. I know, man. I'm all over the place. This is good though, right? The main red flag that I'll look for from my investing profile, for my specific risk tolerances, is that I will not touch a reverse mortgage, right? And so as I'm looking through this information, as I'm looking at this specific data set, what I see here is that on 5/20/2022, there was a sale, it was bought for cash, there was a deed, the buyer was Hunter Ashley, and then it was, so in May 2022, Cape Fear Trust Services sold the property for $155,000. And so this is actually super interesting because this property is still showing as in pre-foreclosure, but as I'm reading it, it more than likely is not currently still in pre-foreclosure, right? It's interesting because what this would mean, really, as I'm looking at this, is that someone they recorded the date, the default here on this date. Let me make sure I'm not missing something. More of the whole view of the property, right? Whatever. Go into the mortgage transaction here. Yeah, I see. It was purchased cash on 5/20/2022. It was sold 5/12/2022 for $155,000, right? And so in this particular case, I might not pursue this one, right? But let's double check some things. What else might I look for? What I might look for is if there's no equity at all and they're in pre-foreclosure, then that's a really bad sign, right? In that particular case, like it could be an opportunity. Um, and when I say, let me back up. So we're talking about equity in this particular case. Equity is a really fun thing for me to talk about because some people understand equity in the traditional way. But I guess I'm like a nihilist or an anarchist or whoever you're going to talk to. So equity is the difference between the loan balance that you currently have and the estimated value or the perceived value or the commonly accepted value, right? Whatever that made up amount is between whatever the delta is, that's how much equity you have for those of you out there who did not know that, right? There's no dumb questions, no dumb answers. But the interesting thing about that is that functionally, that equity is just an idea. It doesn't exist. But in our system, and people may or may not know this, but this is for the group, right? In our system, you can leverage equity as an asset, right? And the conversation there is that you can do a lot of things with that. And so if I see a property that is in pre-foreclosure in a position, thanks, man. I saw you, John. John, I saw you add me on TikTok, and so I see you. And now you're gonna have to. Now you're forcing me. You're forcing my hand. I'm gonna have to make more content and put it on TikTok. So thanks, John. Make sure you guys. Make sure you guys think. Yeah, I appreciate you, man. I hope you're doing well, brother. I hope you're doing well. So yeah, in that equity space, if I see no equity and a house is in pre-foreclosure, like that's a problem because they're not paying. That means that they've taken money out more than likely. Maybe they've got some structure of a reverse mortgage or whatever the case is. And in this particular example, one of the problems in this one, if you look in the mortgage documents, is that there was a reverse mortgage in this property on this property in 2009, right? Now, I there's a lot to be said about what a reverse mortgage can do. And a reverse mortgage is essentially when you have an older person, right? More they're usually senior. When you have an older person, and they've had a house for a long time, they may have a big old bank of equity, right? Let's say they had $300,000. In this particular example, they had at least $214,000 worth of equity in their property. A house that you're living in, a house that you're living in is most often, hot take, the house that you're living in is most often a liability, not an asset, because it's taking money out of your pocket, rich dad, poor dad style, right? So this particular person, this woman, Juanita Rapali, took out a $214,500 loan against her property, against her equity. And so what happens is, in most cases, and there's different structures, the bank will say, "Hey, Juanita, you have $215,000 in equity. We'll let you borrow that money over time. And when you sell the house, you'll pay the money back." And so you start to borrow your equity out. But what ends up happening is that system is not always functional if the person doesn't understand it, if they don't stay up with their payments, and then even more importantly, depending on their circumstances and how good they are with their money, it's not always a great thing, right? There's a lot of things that can go wrong. There's a lot of things that I'm sure it can go right. But what I found, especially with my background and my family, right, is that we didn't really talk about things like that, right? We didn't really talk about that financial fitness, that financial capability, the understanding of, well, yeah, you can borrow against your equity, but when does it go back, right? You're presuming for a moment that at a later date, which is to a degree a fair assumption, at a later date, you're going to have higher value than your total loan you took out, right? And that's fair. But in this case, I'm betting that Miss Rapalai took out all of her equity. Excuse me. I'm betting she took out all of her equity, ended up using it on one thing or the other. Maybe she had been taken advantage of. Who's to say? And then when the bills were due, there was nobody there. And it's such a like there's so many sad stories in these circumstances that it can be to me it's the most valuable to be able to get in contact with these people and come from a position of value and trying to help them, right? I this one it appears is already gone. Um, but the idea that hopefully these this Hunter Ashley that bought the house, they helped, is fantastic. In this particular case, because it's a person and not a company, I suspect that that person was like, I'm gonna go to the courthouse, I'm gonna buy a house, I'm gonna live in it. That's what I want to do. And it's funny enough, we can go check because a lot of this is public data. It's all in public information. So they bought the house
YouTube
back
Music
in
is a music app, and with Music
five
Premium, you'll
twenty
have the
twenty twenty
freedom
two.
to play over
We
80
can go
million
check it.
official songs
Let's go see
without
it there.
ads. So you can
Okay.
keep listening to
The
your kids'
copy
favorite songs
function. There
forever
we go.
and
I was
ever
trying to
and
highlight it to
ever.
copy it out.
Get YouTube
Let's
Music
see
Premium.
if
Try
the
one
owner's
month
still
free.
there. Go over to Privy, take a look, see, and then we'll get back to our list. See, when it but going back to your original question, Sam, um, as far as red flags, looking at pre-foreclosures, I don't even assess them that way because at the end of the day, the goal for me is to just get to the seller, right? It's all people, right? It's all personal stories. And the goal is to get them to talk to me. I get in contact with them and they tell me what the problem is. They tell me what red flags there are. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they won't. And that's understandable, right? It's a vulnerable situation. Oh man, where's the thing? Um, but the red flags exist in many different ways. And it's really for us as investors to suss them out and figure out what the problem is, what that seller might need, and how we might be able to solve it. And so the value that I bring and other investors bring is understanding how to solve those problems in a way that other people can't, right? One, the first step is really just shutting my face, which is hard for me sometimes, and listening, right? Asking the questions in a way that people aren't going to get immediately shelled in and defensive, but also coming from a place of understanding and knowledge. Look, I understand that you're having a hard time. I can see it in the numbers. I can see that you took out I can see that you took out a reverse mortgage, or your mother took out a reverse mortgage, and now she can't do this, that, and the other. I understand. Where do you see yourself? What do you want? There's a whole process that we could pursue and talk about as far as how in the process, right? The condition, the motivation, the time, and the price. Those are all the mechanical parts, but the magic of it and finding those red flags is really just having the conversation. And that's for me, like that's why I enjoy real estate because it's just me talking. Like I'm just talking to people, right? Just like right now, I'm live on Facebook at 11:17 on a Friday, just talking. So let's see. Here we go. So you can see here on Privy, this property was sold 5/20/2022. And yeah, that's good to know, right? The 207,387, yada yada. Okay, so that's the date that it was sold. Privy has a really, really good user interface, and this is one of the reasons why I love it because I'm a visual guy, right? So I want to see what the house looked like, and you know, so like anybody who's out there like doing the Zillow surfing, just like looking at pictures, like if you get one of these platforms, I would probably recommend Privy. One, I find it to be extremely, extremely useful in multiple ways, but also like I like the pictures. One of the cool things in Privy is it has this function that it doesn't always show up, but there's a before and after function in here. And so if it was like a fix and flip or whatever, you can look at you can see what it looked like before and after, right? And so this property isn't terrible. It's not super amazing, but this is somebody's home, and somebody bought it more than likely. I mean, go into the public records, right, that they have here in Privy. Go down here into the mortgage history. Well, they bought it cash, so it would be property history. Here we go. I can see the information about this particular property, right? This is the sale in question, where it was sold by the trustees to Hunter Ashley. And what's super interesting here is that those dates are definitely mismatched on that loan document, on the deed. And so that's one of the things here, right? It's not necessarily a red flag per se, um, Sam, but it's one of those things that you have to double check. So the way that I would actually run this is, in most cases, I get a list like the one that Dave got smooshed. He schmooshed from the county workers, right? They just love him, I guess. And what I would do is I would put those things in a list, and this is actually something that Dave and I are looking to do this weekend. Actually, trying to go door knocking, but I put those things in the list. I identify when are the nearest and soonest auctions, and then I would start at the closest one within a week or within just on the edge of a week and work my way to the oldest at that 30-day mark. And here's something that well, at least my investor cadre, we know to be true, right? Is that people will avoid foreclosure until it's too late. And then outside of that 30-day window, they're probably going to flake, right? Because they don't want to deal with it, or maybe they don't know how, or maybe they're busy. There's so many things that they have happening at once. This is one of the most crucial, critical moments in their lives, and they aren't able to do that thing, right? And they're not really focused on your problem, but they're focused on their own. And so if you can come in from a place of value and you can catch them where they are, or whether that's at the house or somewhere else, you're going to be able to hopefully get to the helping position. And if that turns into you buying their house, then great. If that turns into somebody else buying their house, then great. If that turns into moving them out or getting it cleaned up or whatever it is, that's great. Do that. Help that person and focus on providing that value. And from there, in most cases, it'll just work out. There's definitely deals where everybody doesn't make money, but if you can help somebody's like somebody's mom or dad, their aunt or uncle or grandparents or something like that. And I like to I believe in like karma, like the karmic justice thing. What was that? Is that Addie? A notification on LinkedIn? What is it like? Is it like, hey, your boy streaming? You're not. I am not streaming on LinkedIn. I don't even know if you can stream on LinkedIn. Hey, if you can stream on LinkedIn, let me know in the chat. I gotta know. They got LinkedIn stories. Oh yeah, yeah. But then they took it down, right? They were like, this is weird. This is not Facebook Lambo. Okay, so we got off topic, and I appreciate you guys bearing with me. Sam, you still kicking in there or what? Are we getting some value here? Let me know in the chat. Get a thumbs up. For those of you watching on Facebook, let me get a thumbs up. Let me get a big like. Make sure you hit that button. Make sure you hit that like button. It adds so many adds so many multipliers to how many people I can reach. Um, and then oh yeah, I see that. I love that. It adds those multipliers and it helps me out so much. Okay, so in this particular case, this property is not in pre-foreclosure, right? We know that this property has been sold because we can see that there is a document in here that shows the sale and we verified it, right? I don't necessarily always do the verification, but this one is done, right? And so in this particular case, I don't necessarily have to flag this, but what you can do in PropStream and Batch Leads and all those other ones is you can identify whether or not the offer makes sense, right? In this case, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to. In this case, I'm not going to do that because it doesn't really matter, right? And so let's move on to the next one. Like I said at the beginning or earlier in this one, what I really do is I'll pull this list. And yes, I love the idea of getting in here and checking at the properties and doing the math, but it's not functionally the most effective way if you're really pursuing some of these functions. The most effective way for pre-foreclosures is to get out, get up, get out, and go to the house, right? Go look at it, go see it, go knock on the door, right? Pick a time, pick a day, and go knock the door. And when they're home, you ask them, hey, you introduce yourself. Hi, I'm so and so. And I'm wondering if you might buy. I'm looking for houses in the area, and I'm wondering if you're interested in selling your house. And you don't necessarily have to talk about foreclosure because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. All of these people, especially the ones who really want to sell their house or need to sell their house, um, they if they know they're in foreclosure, they know they need to sell their house, or they need to get their money together and pay off whatever they owe, the arrears, right? And in either of those structures, you buying the house resolves that problem. And so the last thing I'll say on that before we dive in a little bit further and do a little bit faster is that the game is about follow up. So you going and calling these numbers, there's 100 people calling. Literally, as soon as the list for this month showed up, there's people who pulled that list, skip traced it, and skip tracing is when you use public data and systems like these three to see and find contact numbers for the sellers, right? Somebody skip traced those numbers and called them the first opportunity, and they're probably getting 50 calls a day. But how many people are going to the door? How many people are showing up and saying, "Hi, I'm Paris. I want to help you. Hi, I'm Paris. What do you need? What's going on? Catch me up to speed, right? Catch me up to speed. If you've heard me on the phone, if we talked recently, you know, that's like one of my favorite things to say because it encompasses the idea that like I'm listening to you. Tell me what I need to know because I care, and that's gonna help me understand what you need, right? So let's go check one that is a little bit more recent, right? I think we saw a 2023 up there. Okay, so we got 1305 South 3rd Street. Notice the default 2/16/2023, so still a bit ago, right? But we're in the window where this might still exist. Let's find out. It's in Wilmington. Pull this bad Larry up. Oh, excuse me. I'll pull this bad boy up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up here and I'm going to see what I'm going to go straight to the mortgage transaction history. Okay, well, actually, that's not true. I'm going to go to pre foreclosure details. And so sometimes what you'll see in here is an auction date. So sometimes the date they already have an auction identified, right? The notice of the trustee sale, auction date, and so here we go, right? The auction date is 6/22/2022, so this one is also sold apparently, and that's good, right? That data set is old, but also consider this, right? This is in a very active metro area in North Carolina, right? I will verify this because I have trust issues. And the last thing in my mind, the last thing that I want to do is say, oh, I think it might be sold already. I'm not going to call it. And somebody probably already snatched it up and they probably already resolved that problem. I have trust issues. And you should too, right? You should, if you're going to do this, you should go and verify, right? Never let it be said that you didn't do your work. And so let's go check. This one looks like it was sold. What copy? Yeah, 2/16/2023. There's notice of default here. So let's go find out. Privy. Let's go see the last time this particular one was sold. Control A, Control V. So it was sold 3/19/2019. Okay, so now this is interesting. So this property's last transfer of ownership was 3/19 according to this. If I check the mortgage history, there has not been another mortgage. This one was at 5.5. If I go to the property history, it hasn't been transferred since 2019. And so this property, it appears, is still presently in the hands of its owner or its identified owner based on what we see in PropStream. Now, part of this conversation is this, that this information is not up to the second, right? This is information that is captured through electronic means on the county websites and other public information pages. But it's pretty dang good, right? It's pretty dang good. And so right now, what I see is an opportunity. And so the conversation that I would have, this house has been owned for 4 years. It's financed. It's in New Hanover County. There's a bunch. It was built in 2006. There's a lot of information here. The estimated mortgage balance is $1.467 million. I have a number of questions. That doesn't seem right, but I've got hella questions. Let me go look at this. One of the things that I can see in Privy is I can see that mortgage history. And 136. No, that's not quite it. And so what more than likely happened, man, that is something. That is something. Let me check the mortgage transaction history. I really want to know. I want to check these link properties. God, there's so many things in here. So one of the things that you can see in many cases is linked properties, right? And so here we go. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So one of the things that Batch can do and Privy can do and PropStream does very, very well is it can show you what are called linked properties. So earlier I was talking about how you can have a lot of this is public information, right? And so this public data, one of the most important pieces for me as an investor, as I'm doing my super secret snooping, is the public data for addresses. And so when you buy a house, when you buy a property, and you go on deed, which is the document that shows who owns what, right? excuse me, when you're on deed, you're asked for like an address, right? Your location. And so when most people buy a property, what'll happen is they'll put the address of the property that they're buying on the deed as a point of contact location, right? And it makes sense that if I live here, I want information about this place to come here. And so that piece of information is public. If you go and look up any property, the house next door, the home that you're in right now, whomever owns that, whether it's you or your brother, sister, mother, cousin, sister, brother, anybody, right? The company that runs the store down the street, that property's owner has an address associated with it. And so, as an investor, one of those things, the thing that the systems, right, these systems can do is it can identify that property. We're talking about the subject property, right? Property A. Well, property A is at 123 Main Street, and the owner of that property is Parish Capers. And then property B over here is on 456 South Main Street, or a different address. And it's also owned by Parish Capers. Those two properties are linked and they show under the same profile. Now, let's say that you have those two properties and they're in the same name, and that's super easy, right? But what if you got 567 Southeast Street, right? And that property is under a company's name, right? It's called Papers Get Money LLC. Well, what's the address on that property? If that property's if that property's recording address is attached to or identifies any of those other properties, then those three will be linked. And what we'll find is that in many cases, that person who owned this property in their name and owned that property in their name more than likely started a business, but they didn't have a business address yet. Or maybe they did have a business address and they're running their business out of their home. So it points back to that other property, right? These systems are so smart. That's before we even start talking about chat GPT and things like that, right? That linked information is so important. One, it you need to know it because this also applies to you. You can be found, and this is one of the things when it comes to the structures and corporate structures for building anonymity, and making sure that it's not that easy to find out where you live or what you own. That's important, right? Especially as you get further along in your career and whatever path you choose, right? Like imagine for a second how many homes like certain celebrities might have. Well, you might know what their like Beverly Hills mansion is, but do you think they're always in that multi-million dollar home? Probably not. There's probably like a little hut or a cabin or somewhere that's deceptively large, deceptively small on the outside, but has a really large inside, like the back gate, that they probably retreat to. Right? And they probably don't have their name on it. Maybe it's in somebody else's name or it's in an LLC, some other entity. So what I found in this particular property for 1305 is I saw that there was an estimated mortgage balance of $1.46 million with a capital M, right? And so my immediate thought there is that there's got to be a loan, a lien somehow, somewhere leveraging this property. Because what will happen is you can take, we were talking about before equity, we're talking about how equity is made up. Because debt is very similar, and to a degree, debt is also made up. Now, I'm not going to get like I don't want to go off on my super deep tangent about the U.S. dollar and how debt is the real currency. I'm not gonna do that. I'm kind of doing that, but I don't really want to do that. I shouldn't, right? I'll probably get shadow banned, and I don't want to do that because I'm having a good time, right? But when I see numbers like that, that tells me that somebody is using their property and leveraging it to do something different, right? Whenever you have these large numbers, especially for a little tiny little BB house like this, that tells me that somebody's doing something different. In this particular case, because I can see here in PropStream that there is a linked property. Excuse me. I knew that something was afoot, and so when I get in here, I can see some of this information, right? The property that we're looking at up here is 1305 South Street, but I also see 105 Myrtle Lane in Leland, North Carolina, in Brunswick County, right? A pretty big house. It says mobile home and Quest rental properties. And so both of these properties, 1305 South 3rd Street and 105 Myrtle, there is a loan on both of these. And so there it looks like they are, let's go take a look at this one. I should probably time this up. It looks like what they've done is they've probably taken out a loan against these properties as collateral to some degree, right? There's 1.467, 1.4 on 105 South Third Street, and then there's a 99 to $43,000 on the other one. And that's pretty heavy leverage. It's really interesting. When we talk about leverage, when I say leverage, what I mean is that there is a multiplier over the value of the property, and so the goal is for the bank that or whomever the lending entity is that they give you enough leverage to get a good position for yourself, but also it falls in line with the calculation that they make to say, if you make a mistake and you don't do this, we're going to be able to get value. You're doing something that reasonably be worth $1 million. We'll give you X percent of that, right? Maybe we'll give you half or less, right? 30, 20%. And if you go and turn this into $1 million thing and then fail, well, we are going to take all that. That's ours now, right? Or conversation we had there. So in this particular case, in this particular structure, I see Quest Rental Properties. What is this property? 105 Merville Lane, Leland, North Carolina. I want to know what that is. I suspect it is a corporate residence, corporate structure. If I can copy this, that would be fantastic. I'm always struggling with the left click here. It says it's a mobile home, but let's open to this. Let's go check. Use the handy dandy Google. Let's see what we got here. So I see Merville Lane. So this is actually 169 instead of 105, but they may be connected here. So what I'm seeing here, a lot of land. Go down the road here a little bit. I do like to do a little bit of the sniff test on this, but I think that we're going a little bit deep, primarily because I love just talking about these things, and hopefully this is adding value, right? If we've gone too far off track, let me know. Right? If this is something you've seen before, or maybe you're not interested in, let me know. I'll get back on track to the best of my ability. And so what I'm seeing here is that I suspect that this, and I get to look at the lots as well, right? This will show me if I zoom out. But what it looks like is this entire lot probably owned by this particular property. I can go and take a look at the lots. It's not necessarily fully important here because what is not apparent is what is happening with this land. Now, what might have also happened is that somebody may have bought this property because this picture is from July 2022, right? What may have happened, as you can kind of see, I mean, this tells me a lot, right? This tells me that there's some work that need to be done. Maybe the home was unloved. You got the creeping vines going in there, um, but this tells me that there's some opportunity here for forced equity, and this is some of the finer points of what I look for as an investor, right? I'm looking for. I do not mean to continue going up the street, but since we're already halfway up there, I want to see what's over here. Okay, there's a nice little home there. Got some cars in the driveway. Little old town car. I like that. I bang with that. Nice little stone bench. But what I'm looking at here is I'm looking for signs, right? So like think about when you're driving around in your neighborhood or you're going to work or you're doing whatever you do from a day-to-day basis. You're going to Food Lion to pick up 300 eggs, right? You're on your way over there and you're probably driving by some houses, especially here in North Carolina. You're probably driving by a couple in the tree lines, right? So imagine for a second that every single one of those properties, especially things like this, right? Every single one of those properties that has a lot at some point more than likely had an entrance or something to it, right? I just happened to look down on this particular spot, but you'll begin to notice these things as well, that those lots have predetermined or former lot entries. And so in this particular lot, there used to be an entry right here. It's for the most part unused, or maybe they're still using it. Right? Maybe they're taking the main road, maybe they're going up this, maybe they're not. Can't really tell fully by the Google Maps one. You can kind of see a little bit of path here, but you see things like that, and the conversation is, Was the house always over here? Was this house always here on this lot? Maybe it was up front over here, wherever this is. Maybe there's a bunch of things that are missing on these lot lines, right? There's a lot of discussion to be had there, and it's interesting. I like to think of these things as like puzzles that need to be solved. Um, and I enjoy it, right, a whole lot. So in this particular case, I see 105 Merville Lane in Leland, right? And as we're looking at this picture here, that's that property there, right? This is that house. But as I look at this property, what do I see here? I see that it is currently owned by a company that has rental properties in the name, and it looks like that they have turned this property into a rental property. And we can double check, right? In this particular case, it appears that Privy has a little bit of older information, which happens from time to time. Um, I am going to pop in here and batch and see if batch says something otherwise. You will not always have these functions. I like all three, and I use all three to validate certain pieces of information against each other. Excuse me. But you could also like search. You could also just use Google search or check Redfin or Zillow and things like that. Sometimes you'll see some of those sales, even if you don't see who owns it, you might see the sale, right? And so in this particular case, what am I seeing here? Let's go in there and take a look. About Yep, Questionable Properties LLC in Rialto, California, right? And so this is an out-of-state investing company that reached in. They bought this property in, well, it was recorded 3/29/2019. So this is interesting. This is interesting. Let me see. Looking here, foreclosure, they notice of default. Oh, okay. It wasn't as transparent as I thought it was going to be. That's very interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of data in here that I mean I can get into because I'm gonna be here for a while. But what I'm seeing here is that this particular property was obviously resold. It was a new loan put into place, a construction loan for $1.83 million. There it is, right? This is what we were talking about earlier. There was a loan on this lot because somebody is building something. And more than likely, just looking at where it is in Wilmington, right? I suspect, I suspect if we get into the weeds for 105, that we'll find that this particular area, and I'm not completely familiar with Wilmington, so anybody out there in YouTube land, when you guys watch this, whenever I upload it, and probably years from now, I'll probably get flack for this. They'll be like, bro, you didn't know anything. I'm like, you're right. I don't know everything, but I try hard. That's good. That's good enough sometimes. But just imagining Wilmington being the hustling, bustling city it is, I suspect that what's happening here is that they are probably building up something nice. They may have bought multiple properties, probably this entire stretch potentially. Um, they might have bought a bunch of these properties down here and be turning them into something. Who's to say, right? I could, and probably won't do it for this one. But so as an investor, here's my thought process, right? Let's share it for the group. So my thought is why is this part important to me? And I would normally do this a bit faster, but my question is why is this important to me? Why even do all this? Well, I buy properties, right? I want to have more properties in my portfolio. Right? I also, from time to time, have clients who are looking to buy properties. And in this particular case, this one doesn't fit that criteria. But if I happen to know that there was a property that fit their criteria for purchase, and I could help somebody out by selling it for them or buying it from them and selling it to my client, then I would do that, right? As ethically and functionally kindly as possible. But also, one of the things that this tells me is that there is a California based real estate investing company that is buying in Wilmington that to some degree is willing and looking to leverage assets that they've purchased. They're looking to leverage assets that they've purchased to buy and do other things. And so the conversation that I'd be interested in is, hey, who are these guys? What are they doing? I'm not going to dive too deep into that. I think that'll be a different Zoom for a different time, unless you guys really, really want to know how to find these companies and these people and be able to reach out to them. But at the end of the day, it's just like your classic Facebook snooping and Instagram snooping and getting on Google and such, using corporate business searches and searching the Secretary of State website. So I won't do the whole thing, but remind me the next time that I have a stream. I'll have a wild card stream every now and then, and if we really want to know, then we'll get into that. Right. So in this particular case, the 105 Merville probably a no go because it's already been purchased and transitioned into a rental property, or they're tearing it down. We'd have to see. You can definitely call those folks, but it's also 11:44 at night, so probably not gonna do that. Okay, let's get back out of here. Let's go and see what we're going on. I see we still got a few hanging out in there. I think that's good. I see you're still in here, Sam. What other questions do you have? Let's still push through some of these and try to find some of the more recent ones. The music still sounding good? It's jazzy. Make me a little bit sleepy. Kenzo Benzo, you in there? Kenzie? No. Let's see. So I want to read some a little bit older. So probably not. Probably not going to pursue any of these. Maybe we can look at another city. Sam, where should we look, Sam? Another city you got in mind? What are your thoughts? Back up. Maybe let's check Holly Bridge. You let me know if you think of somewhere different. All of you out there in YouTube land, if you don't join the Zoom, then you don't get the chance to give input and you don't get to pick where we're gonna look. So make sure you like the Facebook, but get on the Zoom. Do 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 do. Okay. So in Holly Ridge, there are five pre-foreclosures. What are they? Five properties. There's one that was in January 2023. I suspect this one's been resolved, but let's find out. 307 Old Folkestone. Take a look. Right? Some of these addresses start to look familiar after a while. So we're at 307 Old Folkestone. Copy this. Okay. And then what I'm going to do Okay, so I'm going to take this. Actually, change gears here for a second. A little bit too relaxing here for a second. a little too relaxing. Change gears here for a second. Let's do a little bit of case study. There's this stream that I like. A stream rather. It's a channel that I like called Mind Amend. Mind Amend. That's my jam with a capital J. Oh, we got a new one in here. Intense focus. Yeah, that's me right now, baby. Let's do that. I need some intense focus.
Peekaboo. Paul
Oh,
Stamets
a good
here.
ad.
Welcome to the enchanted
Got me
forest of
good.
Ghost Defense. Here, hidden.
Skip ad. Okay, in the Zoom, Samantha Price asks, how important is location with these properties? Sam, that's a really good question. So when it comes to location, there's really two things that you have to think about. One, location is super important, right? Because location is important when you're looking at the metrics of what's important to you, right? And it really depends on what your goals are. But if you're looking to buy as a rental, then you want to have a place where there are tenants. Oh, in Smith Ferry, yeah, I'll pull it up and we'll look in Smith Ferry. But if you're looking for a place that you want to buy for rental, then you want to have a place where there might be a tenant, right? And so plot twist in places like Sneed's Ferry, which we'll look at. In Sneed's Ferry, actually, let me do some here. So in places like Sneed's Ferry, which is right next to the illustrious Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, right? About this whole big fat boy right here. Um, you have to some degree, a cadre of tenants that will always need someplace, right? So me as a military investor and an agent, right? But me as an investor, I love the idea of Sneeds Ferry. I love the idea of being near military base because there are people who need housing. Even better, they'll continue to need housing over time. Their needs may change, right? So when you're looking at location, right, there's some things you might want to look for, right? What are the jobs in the area is one question. In this particular case, it's a lot of military posts. They're gonna come. You can look up what their pay scale is, right, depending on what areas you're looking at, so you have an idea of what that range will be. Every single Marine doesn't necessarily have the opportunity to buy or to rent a house, right? And if you're looking at tenants, you want to understand who's buying and moving into those areas. If you were to look into a place like Silicon Valley, well, there's a different type of person with different skills and different income level who's living out there, right? In any little area you're looking at. I saw today on one of the bigger pockets social media platforms, bigger pockets being like the world's largest real estate investing website platform. If you haven't heard of it, check it out. Bigger pockets is where myself and my wife learned about real estate investing. There's a podcast. It's a bunch of good stuff. If you have never heard of it, look into it. Probably like it started off with bigger pockets, and then when I learned about Pace Morby and stuff too, like completely different story. Creative finance is where it's at. I like the Burr method, the buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat method. But sub two, creative finance, and just being able, understanding that you could do pretty much anything as long as everybody agrees, is just magic, right? So in Sneeds Ferry, holding me back up. And so as far as location, you want to look at opportunities for employment, right? I like to check the demographics for income in a particular area because that tells me what the rent might be and what type of people are able to buy in a particular area, right? And so I think the national average right now for what people are spending, well, it's definitely gone up. Um, oh yeah, bigger pockets is my jam, man. That's my jam. I remember like once we found bigger pockets, we ended up digging through like 200 episodes, like bam, bam, and back to back. I stayed up late. I was a drill instructor when I learned about bigger pockets, and so I was up late all night just slaying recruits. And then when I would get a moment away, I would go listen to like 5 minutes of an episode, and then I go back out. Oh, slam, slam, slam. But anyway, so when you're looking for that location, you want to figure out why you're doing it. If you're looking at long-term rentals, well, you might want to have some place that has schooling, right? Because in theory, you're gonna have tenants. Well, this music is a little weird. It got weird. Got a little heavy. It's not really what I wanted. I like space, but that's not what I want right now.
Take a right hand, shake it out.
Wait a minute.
How many people here want
Um,
to learn faster? How many people want to remember more?
okay. A little bit of beat. Oh, isochronic. I'm bang with that. All right. Let me know if the music gets too distracting or it's too thumping. I know we're getting on we're about to hit midnight. We're on the midnight run. We're going. I'm still kicking. All right. Where are you? This guy. Nope. Yeah, that guy. Delete this. Oh, we already got it. But yeah, for that location, you want to look at employment. I like to look and understand like some of the demographics for what employers are in the area and what that income looks like for the area, right? I think that the national average for how much money is spent on housing is like 35%, right? So most people in the United States spend a particular percentage of their income on housing. As expenses increased 5.6% in 2021. Obviously, it's old census data. Um, I swear that Oh, there we go. Enzo, that's you? You cute. Where'd you go? I missed you. Okay, what about that beef? Can I have some? I appreciate you. So yeah, there's a particular percentage, and my computer is definitely on the struggle bus right now. I'm almost certain it's between like 35 and 45%. And then so as you start to creep up on the higher side of that percentage of spending, that's usually because the income is lower, right? And then as you go, oh, the good pants. the good pants. Oh my goodness. I love you. Yeah, that's not for the stream. How did you like them? They look good. I'm digging it. What are your thoughts? Mm, I'm busting. Oh my goodness. It needs rice, but it's good. Sorry to eat on stream, everybody. I did something good there. Mm. Oh my goodness. 10 out of 10 would recommend. I bang with that. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So, what I'm gonna do in here is I'm going to look at the count. So yeah. So yeah, you're looking for employment. You're looking for identifying what type of renters you may be having in there. Some people will look for places near sporting arenas, right? And so my thought is that there's not really sporting arenas near Sneeds Ferry, truthfully. However, I really like to compare in my assessment, although the bases are not sporting arenas, I give them the same gravitational weight as a sporting arena, right? Because there's a seasonal effect where you have graduations, you have a season where you have a permanent change of station change, right? To me, although it's obviously not a sporting arena, I suspect that I equate many of those functions of a sporting arena to be mirrored in the functions of a military installation, right? So looking near Camp Lejeune, looking near Camp Johnson's the same place on the West Coast, overlooking at Camp Pendleton or San Diego, right? It's not necessarily the same gravity as a sports stadium. However, the mass and density of people that you're seeing there might be somewhat similar or comparable, right? To answer your question, Sam. So employment, opportunities. Um, One of the things that I like to look for is, are there other people investing there? That's one of the things. That's not necessarily the only thing to look at, but in some cases, you don't want to be the first person in a particular market, right? You don't want to be the groundbreaker unless you got it and you understand that area very well. You've got your entire team structured from the ground up, boots on the ground, the contractor, all the other vendors and things in there. Once you have those things, you can do those things. But in many cases, you want to see at least one or two in a space, maybe doing some flips, or they have obvious rentals and then getting into it from there. And so, let's see. Oh man, there's some. Oh, okay, it's good to know. So, getting into the nitty gritty here, right? There's some stuff in here. Man, that's wild. But what's really crazy is that there's some newer looking properties in here, right? And it just goes to show you that when we're talking about opportunities, what can happen in life, like things happen, man. You never really know. What happened to make somebody go into foreclosure is not necessarily, not always because they're a bad person. In many cases, not because they're a bad. It's not because they're a bad person. Like something happened in their life that changed something. So I pulled up this one right here, 734 Chadwick Shores Drive in Sneeds Ferry, because it's one of the newer ones, right? I'm pretty sure Dave got the list for all of Ondo County, so I definitely need to check that out. I suspect that this one's already snatched up. I'm gonna check it before I go digging into the prop stream data set. Let me take a look at if I see it was sold. Man, there it is, already gone. 3/24/2023. That was like 7 days, well, 13 days ago, something like that. I don't do math in public. You guys caught me. I'm a fraud. I don't do math in public very well. I usually use formulas for these things. But yeah, so in this particular case, this house was already bought and sold. Right? And so I like Privy because it puts some of the very specific information that I want right up front. In this particular case, if I go check the previous sale, go check that ding dang. Oh yeah, this is an example of how it looks when it's got some before and after action, right? So in this particular case, it looks like they did a roof replacement. The door looks to be about the same. Nothing crazy, honestly. On the left and gray on the right. I really like when there's a double picture because I really like when there's a double picture because sometimes, and this is smart from my perspective, right? Sometimes you have a photographer. Oh, they replaced it. They got a little chandelier. I like that. That's very cute. Sometimes the photographers, what they'll do is they'll look at the previous pictures from the previous listing and they'll copy it almost shot for shot. And so I love when there's a, oh, let me see that. We got here, Sam. Sam's chatting with me. Let's see what we got here. So, have I found that different Sam? Sam says, have you found that different locations in nearby areas are more successful for specific investing strategies such as short-term rental, long-term, or etc. Um, so in this military community, I find that that's true because there are different people living in different areas around the base, right? So this is going to be true across the board. It's the same set of rules just applied to different variables. And so here's one of the straight shooting points here is that fact there are some homes that are more expensive than others, right? And so they are more expensive for a whole host of reasons, but in general, because one area or home, set of homes, and the finishes in those may be higher end than others in another area. And so because they're more higher end, the home prices are higher, right, reasonably speaking. And then that's one function. And then you also have functions like location and closeness to certain facilities and amenities, right? So you might have a place that has access to water, right? Like waterfront properties. Like, okay, that's fantastic. Every property can't have water, it's gonna have higher value. And so as far as the identifying those different investing strategies, it really depends where you're looking and what that community has, and what it has to offer, and what you need, right? So here's the secret, right? And it's just like this is really me cheating, but it's fun, right? I love bigger pockets, and I was a proponent and still am a proponent for the Burr method, the buy, renovate, yada yada. You know the spiel. But the creative finance space, right? Sub two with Pace Morby and the whole crew, right? This is really a game changer for me, right? The idea that like literally I have a contract that I still need to send out. We gotta send that contract. We suck. I have a contract right now that we're buying a house for about $3,500, and I'm gonna turn it into a rental, and it's gonna make me about $400, $500 a month after that, for the rest of my life, and then it'll be more once it's all paid off. It'll probably pay it off soon, right? But the way that you approach and enter a deal is it's the most important piece. And so yes, if you have an area that has more amenities, right? It's more luxury. You have more access to downtown. Well, it's probably functional that you'll be able to do if it's allowed in the county. Some short-term rental functions in there, right? Your people are gonna want to be near those sporting stadiums, and so that makes sense. Near the bases, especially on the side like closer to the beach, especially in summertime, you're more than likely gonna have people who want to live, who want to be near the water, but don't want to get a hotel, right? And so if you can price yourself in a good space, or you offer them enough amenities within that place that the hotel doesn't have, or the comfort level is higher, then you're going to be able to be competitive in there. And so I would say that for the most part, with some thought, they it aligns very simply and straightforward, right? If I'm looking for the short-term rental option, I want to ask myself, why would someone rent this place short-term? They're going to the beach? Are they here for family day? Are they here for the School of Infantry? When are those events, right? Is there a big summer festival? Is there a large celebration for Independence Day? Right? All of these different events that I might imagine are important to a population around me, I'm going to put those on a list, and I'm going to ask myself, is this why people will come? Right? If there's with a sporting arena, for example, you're constantly having people showing up because every week, reasonably speaking, there's something happening there. That's people showing up, and especially because those sports fans are fervent and love their teams. Like, that's money. And I'm gonna price myself accordingly, right? And to some degree, the closer I am to that specific location, the higher my value is. I might be further away, but maybe I have some amenities that other places don't have. Usually in the inner city, you're gonna have no parking. Right? So one of the reconstruction jobs that my wife and I have planned, we're looking to add parking next to the property instead of on the street because in this particular space, um, there's not a lot of parking. Right? And people are like literally fighting in the streets for parking. We don't want that for our prospective tenants. Right? As far as the long-term space for me, my view on the whole thing is that I want a tenant. As far as the long-term space, I look at it like this. Why do people leave when they're renting? Only a few different reasons, right? They are going to buy a house, they're going to buy their own place, right? And the reason that we bought our own house first time was because my landlord upped the rent, which is the second reason, right? It became too expensive. The cost of renting overcame the perceived cost of ownership. And at that point, it made more sense for me to buy. If I was going to pay $2,000 in rent, I might as well buy my own place and get to keep my own money. I understood the structure of like the air quotes piggy bank of equity. Why would I pay? What was that dude's name, babe? What was the landlord? It's all good. Never mind. It's good. I love you. Why would I pay the landlord's? Why would I pay the landlord's mortgage when I could go buy my own house for less than what he was about to charge me, right? And so, from my viewpoint, I want to try to keep my rents reasonable, right? Not really even market rate, under market rate to some degree, because that's one of the factors. That's one of the first choices that's going to make a tenant leave. They're going to go buy their own property if they're so inclined. But if their rent is too high, if it's increasing too quickly, especially outpacing their earning, then they're going to leave. That happened to me. And it wasn't because I was like, oh, I want to get out of here. I hate this place. It was because it didn't make sense financially, right? And so being aware of that is important. Doing the research with tools like Rentometer, right? One of the handy dandy cheat sheets I have here in my arsenal because, being on top of technology and things like that, you have to know things like this. You have to stay on top of your game. It's Rentometer, right? I use Rentometer to identify trends in rent rates. And so it's not perfect because it is based on reported data, but in some areas, especially with areas with more reported data, it's really, really good, right? So in this case, I'm going to put the address and put 1500 because I like to start with 1500. All those things that we're talking about here, they really result in a pretty cohesive picture of the feasibility of the sale or feasibility of renting it, right? I want to have a place where enough people might want to rent it that I have reasonable competition, right, or reasonable interest. I want to make sure that it's not oversaturated with rentals of higher quality at a lower price point than what makes sense for me. I also, the main factor is how much does it cost to acquire? And so if your cost for acquisition is too high, as your cost of acquisition goes up, your rent has to rise with it, right, to follow it up. And so if you buy a property right now using traditional means, your debt service, the cost to maintain that property, is going to be higher because the interest rates are at 6.5, 7, sometimes 7%, right? But using different structures and leveraging debt and using cash, and then even more importantly, like creative finance, that allows that cost of entry to be lower. And that means that I can price my property lower than anybody else. They're in as good as or better condition. And that's going to keep a tenant in that property longer. I like the long-term game because there's a whole bunch of things there, right? I like the long-term game. It makes sense to me. But even more importantly, because I'm a housing provider, right? I'm providing a service. I'm providing housing to those persons that might need a place. And so in this particular case, looking at Chadwick, right? We pulled up the rent rates. Did I answer your question? Sam, let me know. And on my structure, knowing what I know now as a sub-2 student and a creative finance convert, I will never use. I probably will never qualify for another loan. I don't want to. I think that it's, from my perspective, it's probably like, and this sounds kind of crazy. This is gonna be my hot take, right? It's gonna be my flip, but like, from my perspective, with what I know, um, I won't qualify for another loan ever again. I don't. Why would I use my credit? Why would I use my cash? Why would I use any of my entitlements if I don't have to? Um, yeah, I just don't. It doesn't make any sense to me. In fact, I would say, arguably, it's probably, from my perspective, it's the lazy way, right? I don't have to do any work. I don't have to think. I don't have to put any machine into it. I'm like, hey, here's my lender and here's my agent, and please buy this house, and then we're gonna cross our fingers. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to negotiate. I want to talk about what we need and what I can do and all these different things. It's all problems, right? I like the problem solving aspect. So yeah, in this case, for 734 Chadwick, the average rent is about 1808, and we're gonna scroll down here a second. So this is based on 3-bedroom, 1.5 or more, seen in the last 12 months within a 10-mile radius. Now, looking at this rent rate, looking at this rent report, this is the subject property. There is red is higher. I believe blue is moderate and green is lower, something to that effect. Now, what's interesting here, or something to note, is that rentometer isn't infallible, as I was saying earlier. It's really dependent on how much activity is reported. And so right now it's only showing 4, 3, 1.5. What I do like to do is I like to check the zip code first. We got 28460. Let's check the zip instead of the exact address. This one says 1800. 1800 is good. Let's check the zippy zip. 28460. And then let's see if 1800 or 3, 1.5 or more is good or not. Oh, now we go. Here we go. So, looking across the entirety of the zip code, this little snapshot of Onslow County, the average is 1915, based on 2, 3.5 bedrooms within the last 6 months. Well, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms. This is interesting because there's actually less that it's looking at here. In this particular case, I'm going to pull the report because I have enough of them and I haven't used them all. And yeah, Sam, if you're interested, let me know. If you're looking in Sneaksbury, you can have this particular report. Now that I've already pulled it, I can just send it to you. Drop me an email and I'll send it over. All you watching this in YouTube land, if you are interested, you got to get in the Zoom. You got to get in the Zoom. The Zoom gets special attention. If you're on Facebook, I love you, but that's not where the magic is. So next time, come to Zoom. I mean, stay on Facebook too if you'd like. I appreciate you, but Zoom gets more attention. Okay, so let's see. 28460, 915, the median, okay. All right, so it's actually, the average here is skewed because there's only 2 instances, right? And so these 2 properties happen to coincidentally be a duplicate entry for the same property at 2 different points. And so that doesn't really give me good confidence in this particular space. It's a good note though, right? And what I do like to do is, I take this address, I could have just pushed Google, but I like to pop this over and see what's that particular home look like, right? What was the condition of that particular home? What did it look like? What does it look like now? Something weird. Where is it? And that'll let me know a ballpark of what those similar properties are. And so in this particular case, that does not match up. I believe it's this one, 1001 Quarters Landing. 1001 Quarters Landing is a residential home, nothing crazy. Okay, so in the Zoom, Samantha says, okay, let me make this a little bigger. Can't see that there. Profile. Okay. She says, changing the subject. Are there any tax benefits for loading? Is any rice over there for you, boy? It's the other rice. It's the one that you made before. Oh, you made a parfait? I thought that was rice and steak. I'm trying to read your message here, Sam. Give me one second. Yeah, I was like, what the heck? You got rice you weren't sharing? I am offended. Okay, so changing the subject, are there any tax benefits for purchasing a foreclosure property? And so at the question, Sam, so at this particular moment, there are no specific benefits that I'm aware of for focusing on a foreclosure property. However, once you take on a property, you're getting all the other tax benefits that come with homeownership, right? You're able to take advantage of that depreciation. You're able to take advantage of the It looks like we're live. I believe we're live. Sam, can you hear me? That's weird. I gotta make sure I'm still live. Well, yeah, it says I'm still live on Facebook. I have no idea what happened. All right, cool, cool, cool. Bet. Stand by for disking. Let me get these things in order here. We get this over here. Ba-ba-ba. Yeah, I have no idea why she would do that. That was weird. Okay, so yeah, we're still streaming live to Facebook. I see it over there. Hopefully, that doesn't split my stream. Um, we'll figure it out. So, but yeah, so once you when you have that property, the IRS says, yeah, this property is worth, call it $250,000. Bow, 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 bow. The IRS says, okay, that property is $250,000. The depreciation scale that we're going to give you is 27 and a half. Oh, wait a minute. Don't do math in public. Is 27 and a half years, right? 27 and a half years is the traditional depreciation schedule. So the IRS says, hey, by the 27th and a half year, based on all of the repairs, et cetera, that you're going to do during this period, the house should be worth zero. And so what that means is that for a $250,000 property, you would be able to deduct $9,090 every year. Now, here's the crazy part about this, right? Well, step one, most people aren't putting that much money into their homes if it's $250,000 each year to keep the maintenance up, right? Because they're like, oh, yeah, there's nothing to do. I don't have to paint nail pumps. I don't have to touch up drywall. I'm definitely not painting my garage. Um, my kids got their handprints on the wall in the bedroom. I will paint that later, right? We'll get after that. The dings in the LVP from dropping knives or scissors or whatever, that'll be the next guy's problem, right? And so people aren't putting that money back in their houses. They're not spending that money. They're not spending that money on maintaining their properties, which is okay. It is what it is. It's not a big deal, and most people don't. But what happens is you get deferred maintenance, and when it comes time to sell, the conversation is, oh, well, yeah, we got to do all this work. So imagine this: you've got $9,000 in theory, $9,000 every year that you get back in your pocket, because presumably you've already spent it, right? So it's an offset thing, but you didn't spend it. And so when it comes time to sell, this $9,000 is essentially multiplied. And this is where people end up spending their money, because now after three, four, well, and around these bases, around after 2 or 3 years, you've got deferred maintenance. You haven't kept up with your paint. You haven't touched up your landscaping or whatever the function that you're going to focus on is. Um, Probably kitchens and bathrooms. That's where your biggest bang for your buck's going to be. But that's something to keep in mind. Another little known fact, hidden secret plot twist is that you can actually take that depreciation ahead of the schedule, right? So that's supposed to be accounted for it's traditionally accounted for every year over 27 and a half years, right? But as an investor, if I buy a property that's worth $250,000, I can take what's called accelerated depreciation. And so let's say that I have a large taxable income for whatever reason. We're not going to talk about why because that part's not important. But let's say I would have a large taxable income to me specifically or to my business. It doesn't necessarily matter. But if I have a large taxable income and I don't want to pay taxes on that, right? Because I love the government, but I also don't want to give them all of my money, right? That's a different conversation. I'm not trying to get shadow banned. Don't ban me. Gotta skirt the line there, right? Um, that yeah, gotta go. That accelerated depreciation in this particular case, if I were to take 10 out of those 27 and a half years up front, that means that I would be able to reduce my taxable income by $90,000, right? And so if I was making $90,000 a year and I didn't want to pay the tax on whatever that number particularly is, um, I would be able to buy a property and then offset it, right? And the other part of that is maybe I don't want to take all 10 of those years, but if I just buy a bunch of different properties, right? If I buy a bunch of different properties, I get the benefits of that tax depreciation, and then that reduces my taxable income. And then even more importantly, it earns me income if I do it the right way, right? I buy it smartly. So now I am purchasing assets for cash flow, and I'm also getting some of the other benefits of that. So then go back to answer your question. There's no, at this moment that I'm aware of, there's no transparent functions that the government says, yeah, buy foreclosures, tax benefits. But the real conversation here, Sam, is if you're looking at tax benefits, the conversation would be, what are your goals as an investor first, right? If you're looking for tax benefits, well, I would argue that your greatest bang for your buck is probably going to be focusing on cash flow. That's your bread and butter, right? If you're looking to increase your lifestyle, instead of focusing on how you can save money from Uncle Sam, um, let's just make more money. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts? Let me hear you. Hear it in the chat. Hey, for all you checking in, um, I know that the stream is live and it's going other places. Hey, thanks for dropping in. We're still hitting the midnight run. Now it is 12:21, so we're after the midnight period, and I love that. Still going strong. So Sam's position here, she said, "Thank you. You're absolutely welcome, Sam. I appreciate you for participating. Right, still kicking." Sam in Zoom says, "What are some good exit strategies that you use as an investor?" My one and only strategy today, right now, forever and always, as I look at my beautiful wife, touching her face, be cute, is subject to, right? I am now a convert, right? I am a creative finance guy. This is my thing. I love it. I really, really love it because there's no limitation to what I can do now. I like to fancy myself a pretty creative guy. And in fact, we'll probably get into one of these examples here. Um, but yeah, there's a couple different exit strategies you can take, and they're somewhat dependent on, well, not somewhat, they're specifically dependent on your entry, right? So your exit is determined by how you entered the deal. I love sub two. I love the creative space, and that tells me how I can exit. And it really depends on what the seller needs and what I need to do. So let's think of an example, right? So let's say that I have a property. Let's say that I have a property that needs repairs, right? So let's look at Chadwick. This one didn't really need repairs, but it had some things it could do, right? Um, I love the idea of a property that needs work. If I'm going to buy it traditionally, right? If I'm going to buy it and do the bird method, or I'm going to do a fix and flip, if I get a loan and buy that property, right? I am facing the cost of that acquisition up front. We were talking about like the cost of acquisition before, right? If I do that, my cost of acquisition, even if I only put like 10 or 20% of the deal that down because someone's going to fund me the other 80%, right? My cost of acquisition might be a couple $1,000s, right? I might have to come to the table with some money in order to do this, plus the cost over time of holding that money because I'm going to pay for the privilege of holding that money over time, right? However, one of the functions that I like to use here is called an ovation agreement, right? This makes so much more sense, and the idea is so simple. But if you've never heard of it and you've never seen it and you've never even talked about it, you wouldn't think of it. So imagine this, right? So let's say that I'm trying to buy your house, and maybe this is a bad example because this house is fantastically beautiful already, right? But let's say that I am, let's say I'm trying to buy your house over here at 123 Main Street, and it's not the best, right? It needs work. There's obvious, like you got grass growing out of your roof, right? You've got like broken windows or something like that, and I'm like, hey, that's an opportunity for some value add. I want to buy that house, please and thank you. Um, let's see what we got here. I want to buy your house, please and thank you. Um, and you say how much, and I say, okay, well, it could be worth. I mean, here's some snapshot math. All right, let me pull this back up over here. Okay, so here's a good one, right? What we're talking about here specifically, let me hit it up front. It's called a novation agreement, and the idea is this: that I want to buy your house, and the price that I offered you doesn't work for you because you don't like it or you want something different, right? And so the idea is this: that for most investors, we're still talking about that beautiful $250,000 house, right? Or in theory, that 250 ARV, right? So at the end of the deal, it could be worth $250,000. Let's just say it's not in the best shape, it's all beat up. Um, if there's a house that's worth $250,000, many people will offer 50%, just 50 cents on the dollar, and say, "Hey, would you take 125,000 for the property?" And most people, many people will say no. There's definitely some people who are in a situation where they're like, yes, I'll take $125,000 cash right now. Give me that money, please and thank you, right? However, for some people that doesn't make sense because they've been in the property, they got equity. Maybe they have more than $125,000 in equity, and so they're gonna be like, no, I'm not gonna take that deal. I'm not gonna take that deal because out of the $250,000 that it could be worth, maybe I have $200,000 of equity, right? So why would I, if it's worth $250,000 in its best form, why would I take 125? I would never do that, right? Bad deal for me. And as an investor, there's a bunch of reasons why that's probably not true. I'm not going to get into like the core math of that just yet, or at this point. I probably will though, because we still got some time. But here's the thought: in this particular case, the ARV is 200, $250,000, right? Let's say that I want to buy it at 125, but they won't sell it to me at 125. And the reason I want to buy it at 125 is, let's say I got to put $100,000 into the property. Well, let's do this, right? Let's find one. Let's get a specific example. Um, I don't think I have one in here that I could use. I'm trying to think. I think I have a couple. Oh, you know what? I think I have some saved in here in batch. I'll go to batch. I'm gonna go look at the ones that we pulled today. If I can pull that list up. All right. So in batch, I have a handy dandy sheet here. Where are you? Where are you? Wilmington, Jacksonville, Sneeze Ferry Possibles. Um, I like the novation agreement snapshot of it, right? The novation agreement, instead of trying to buy it outright and having the holding cost of all that money that I had to pay them, that 125, what I can say is, all right, check it out. I want to buy your house, but you won't sell it to me. I'm going to do it for fix and flip. So I'll tell you what, you keep the house in your name. Let's make an agreement. I'm going to, you still own the house. Let's make an agreement. I'm going to renovate the house. And when I'm done renovating it, we're going to sell it on the open market and we're going to get that $250,000. And how much money did you want? You wanted 150 or you wanted 200? Okay, cool. You'll get your 200. And then everything after that, I get. And the value there is that I might bring in the $100,000 in this particular case, right? Um, and in this example, it's actually kind of a bad example. I wouldn't do that deal. Um, but I might bring the rehab costs, but I'm not bringing the acquisition cost. And what happens there is you partner with the homeowner so that you can enter the strategy low cost and no cost. You have no holding cost because there's no loan that you have to pay to another lender every single month. Or if you pay for it cash, then great. I mean, it's great, right? But most people are using other people's money because it's leverage and you get a better return using somebody else's money, which is what I love. Miranda's Miller in the house. Millie Rock on any block. What's going on? What's going on, Millie Rock? Hey, text your girl. Tell her she cute. Make sure you text her right now, Miller. Please and thank you. Make sure you like the stream too. Like, and then share. I know you're on California time, so it's still pretty early over there. Yeah, she's coming. Well, yeah, make sure she likes and shares and such. Anywho, um, that agreement, that agreement that you make with the seller, you can create so much value for yourself because you're not having those costs of acquisition. I don't have to pay every month for the money that I'm holding. I don't have to pay all the utilities and all those other things that the homeowner is responsible for. Maybe I'll pay some of it because I'm going to use electric and maybe some water and things like that, but it's not that much, right? And in that structure, you can make that agreement, get into a flip and get out of the flip, take your piece of the profit once the home sells, especially if the homeowner can move on to the next thing, right? And so that's value added, just snapshot. That's one of the exit strategies. Um, Here's another one. This one might blow your mind, right? If that one does, if the novation the agreement makes sense to you, let me know. Or if it doesn't, hit me up. We can talk about it. Here's the one that like is my absolute favorite right now, because it just makes so much sense and it's just really not fair, right? Here's the idea. I take over property. Man, I don't even know if I can explain this one in a way that it's gonna make sense without pictures, but we'll do this, right? I'm gonna say it, and you're gonna be like, "What did you just say to me?" Right? And it's okay, right? You let me know. I'll definitely have to cover this in another point. This is my bread and butter, but I want to find one of these properties here. Um, you take over a property. I'm gonna turn it into a rental, right? So I take over this property, subject to, so that it has a loan. It has a loan on it. I'm not getting a new loan. I'm not replacing it. I don't want to, right? The reason that you see my handy dandy little lower thirds over there showing that I want to look at low, no equity homes and sub 4%, there's a reason for that. That sub 4% loan is what a lot of people have in this area, right? There's a lot of service members who use their VA entitlement to get a 4% or less loan back in 2020, 2021, blah, blah, right? I want those. And that's the entry point. But let's say that I've found someone who, I mean, let's look at Chadwick. I don't think this is one of those examples actually. See what we got here. Is this a VA loan? Is this a sub 4%? Digga, 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 digga. Okay, 6.12. That is not what I want. Do not like. I'm gonna pass go on that one. Um, the exit strategy for this is that I take over that loan, that 30-year mortgage at 2.9%, which has a payment of like $672 before tax and insurance. And then I wrap that loan in a bigger loan, right? And when I say wrap that loan, here's the structure here. All right. This is gonna get a little complicated, but I'm gonna use straight terms, right? Everything that you know about real estate in most cases is taught to you by the banks. And the banks like to convince people, man, this is gonna get me blocked. I'm definitely gonna get suppressed. I'm totally into it though, right? This is gonna be a good clip for my YouTube, right? Um, Everything that you know about money and real estate is taught to you by real estate investors and the bank, real estate agents and the banks, right? And the banks particularly in lenders because they pay. There's a whole thing, right? Anyway, you can be you all the same systems that functionally we allow to be used for lending. Those systems, those notes, the promissory notes, you can make a promissory note, right? Like, hey, Samantha, I owe you $1, or you owe me $1. I owe you $1 and I'll pay you whenever, whatever the date is, right? That's a promissory note. That's what your mortgage is, except that it's associated with a piece of real estate, right? Now imagine this. Let's say that, I mean, this is literally what happens, right? Um, when your home is bought, or when you buy a home and you get a loan with guaranteed rate or PennyMac or UMW, whatever the case is, they own your loan. They have a promissory note. And then sometime in the life cycle of your loan, some people you might have had this happen. You get a notice that you got a new loan servicer, and PennyMac has transferred it to UMW, and you're like, okay, why do I care about that? Why did I even get that? Why are you even telling me this? Did my payment change? No. Did my mortgage terms change? No. What happened? You got a new loan servicer. What does that mean? That means that lender A sold your loan to lender B. Now, what? They didn't just transfer it for funsies. They sold the debt. They sold the note. When they gave you a loan, they made a piece of paper that said, you owe me $250,000 that is going to collect interest at 2% or 4% or whatever the case is every year. And then after you signed the paperwork, they waited for like 30 days, sometimes 60, sometimes more, sometimes whatever. But they waited a little bit and they went to the note market, right, which is where people buy these debts. And they said, hey, is anybody looking to buy this loan? Um, it will pay you $250,000. I will sell it to you for 175, 150. And someone was like, yeah, I'll buy that. How much does it pay every month? Oh, 115, $1,100 every month, right? And so they sold that note. That same system of note investing and creating value and hypothecating is something that you can do. Right? It's something that maybe you've never heard of, you've never experienced, but those systems exist. And so here's the exit strategy. Here's subject two. Here's the wrap. So you buy a property at, let's call it, I find this property, it could be worth $250,000. I don't even really care about the price, right? Because I'm going to buy it subject to the current terms. Let's say there's $210,000 left on the loan. And the house, if it was all up to date and beautiful, maybe it could be worth $300,000, right? Something to that regard. So that $210,000, I'll take it over. That $210,000, I'm going to take it. The payment, let's call the payment $500 or $600 a month, right? I'm going to continue to pay that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that $210,000 property, that loan that still exists right now, and I'm going to say, give me a number. Let's make up a number, right? How much do we want to make on this deal? Let's call it $50,000, right? I'm going to call it a $50,000 bonus. In fact, we're going to use a very specific calculation. I'm going to use 1.15. I'm going to add 15% to that. It happens to be pretty dang close, right? 9 grand off or whatever. I don't do math in public, right? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make this I create a loan, whereas the base loan, the original loan was $210,000. What's that, bub? Is that for you? That address? Okay. Multifamily in Wilmington? Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to take a look at that. Yeah, I'll probably run it. Kenzie just sent me a multifamily deal in Wilmington, 6 houses they're trying to sell. We'll probably run the numbers on that here online together in a second. 306 days. They haven't sold it. Oh, we're gonna buy that fucking. It's a sixplex, or is it a package of six? I love that. Anybody want to go in on a sixplex in Wilmington with me? Or it's not a sixplex, it's 6 houses in Wilmington. Um, I'm gonna upload this to YouTube. 6 units. Wait, 6 units? You tripping, dude. You I like you, but you're crazy, man. Um, so Sam, I hope you're taking notes, right? Because this is where it gets gnarly. So that original loan, he said it was $210,000. I should probably just pull up the little notepad, right? So that original loan was $210,000, right? So here we go. Let's do this. Ignore what the data says on this. I'm using this for calculation purposes only. So $210,000, and let's say that that property has a 2.9 interest rate. And when it was taken out, it was at 30 years. And so the monthly payment on this is $874, right? I'm gonna wrap that loan in a loan. I'm gonna create a loan product where I add $50,000 of equity on top of it, right? Because equity is just the difference between the perceived value and the loan amount owed, right? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this $210,000 and I'm gonna add $50,000 on top. And that you don't have to use that number, but for the sake of this illustration, we're gonna use 50,000. So instead of a $210,000 loan at 3% for 30 years, I'm gonna make it a $260,000 loan. Take note of that number, Sam. 874.08, right? That was a 30-year loan. So I'm gonna add 50 grand to this. I'm gonna make it $260,000, right? Now here's what I like to do. who's buying this house at 260? Let's say it's not worth 260, right? We said it was at 250 at best. Why would somebody pay more than it's worth or something to that effect? Here's the idea. There are tons of people who have the income and circumstances to qualify for these properties, but for whatever reason, the banks will not approve them. It's not even for whatever reason. There's very specific reasons. It's their underwriting, right? The banks will not approve them for a loan, a traditional loan, because of the way they earn their money. And this is getting deeper into the knowledge of how the financial system is structured. But in most cases, if you don't have verifiable income, right? If you don't have a steady income stream, if you don't have, in most cases, a W 2 job, but there's other circumstances in there, right? If you've been outside of the same, if you haven't been in the same field for the same certain a certain amount of time, 2 years of job employment in the same industry, then you might not be able to qualify for a loan, right? There's a statistic I saw the other day where about 40%, and this was an old statistic. This is from I think it was 2022, right? 40% of persons who applied for, actually, no, this is a 2020 statistic. 40% of persons that applied for a mortgage were denied in 2021. And this is when the rates were at like 2 point something stupid, right? Maybe a little bit more for some people, right? And so now you have these loans that have much higher rates, and there's more people being denied because they don't qualify, but they have to have somewhere to live, right? And the idea is this, that as a housing provider, I can do that. And the reason I can do that is because I can create a premium. I add a premium to this. And what I can do here, instead of having the original loan, which is a 210,000 at 3%, what I can do is I can add $50,000 of equity into that, and I can increase the interest rate. Right now, this is what's crazy, right? Let's say that I'm going to make this a 5%. Right? Let's call it a 5. Oh, not 5, just 5%. 5%. Oh, so right now the payment is 13 something. So you're thinking like, why would you do that? And you just made that property super expensive. No one's gonna buy that, right? Well, it's my loan. I get to decide what I want it to be. So I'm gonna extend the rate. I'm gonna extend the term to 40 years. Okay, so this is 1253. So this one is actually off scale. So 5% is a little too great. I like that idea of extending the term to reduce the rate. It reduces the amount that is paid each time. And really what I'm going to look at is it was a 2.9. Let's do a 4.2. So 119,000. Okay. So the idea here is that there's a bunch of different variables that I can change here. I can lower the loan amount. And I think that in this case I should, because it was 240, I think it was 241 500, right? 15% over. And so if I made it a 4% for 40 years, it'd be 1,039, which is about, I forget what the number was, but it's like 150 greater Okay, okay. Yeah, the system's like, hey, you should probably not be talking about these things. You stop that right now. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Yeah, it's like move on, man. You're getting too deep, advanced. Okay, okay, okay. I think I'll be right behind you. I think I'm hitting the threshold. Did you already put the food away? Come on, man. Would you be so kind? Okay. Thank you, baby. I love you. Um. Okay. So that was a lot. Chat. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's the yeah, the Matrix is like, hey, man, shut your face. Stop telling people the secret. Don't do this. Don't do this. Um. And so in this example, we're making a delta of 100 and some dollars, which is actually not that much. This is a skewed example because the numbers aren't real here, right? Um, and most likely the payment, most likely the loan would be much lower than the 210 that we're talking about here, right? And so the loan balance that we took over would be much lower, the delta would be much higher. And there's actually another way to do this, but all that goes to say that why would I do this? The reason that I would do this, the reason that I would wrap this loan and do it this way is because when I have a renter, when I have a tenant and I'm a landlord, I am responsible for maintenance. And so if I take in $200 for me, that's probably nowhere near enough, depending on what your rent is. But let's say I take in $200 gross, right? Whatever my mortgage is after all my expenses, take well, I take whatever that mortgage is, I have a delta of $400, right? After that with that $400, some of that is going to go away to maintenance. Some of that should, I say should, I said going to go away, it should go away. If you're a good landlord, smart landlords count for expenses in advance. And so my rent is not just a random number. It is absolutely not my mortgage value, like my mortgage payment plus $100. That is not enough. Don't do that to yourself, right? Um, but I have a factor that I'm going to build in there. Some people use the 25% gross rule, right? That means that they're going to put 25% of whatever their gross is off to the side for war chest. With our property, we ended up using the 1.28 percentage, right? We had 28%, really it's 38%, different conversation. But we use 28% on top of the mortgage payment because we're accounting for 10% for repairs. We're accounting for 10% for capital expenditures, which is your roof, the water heater, all those big things that you're gonna have to get done. The repairs covers like replacing carpet, paint, all those things like that, right? And then we also account for vacancy, right? So we account for a month's worth of vacancy at the end of a year-long lease, and so that comes out to 8% of the rent each month, right? So that's 28% on top of the mortgage, just to call even, right? Um, and we also have to account for property management. Property management is another 10% potentially, and so you got 10% for repairs, 10% for capital expenditures, 8% for vacancy, and then 10% for property management. Because if anything happens to me, I want to make sure that my property is gonna be taken care of. I don't want to do it. And we do self-managing. We have a structure so that our company gets paid for managing that property, which we set up in whatever different conversation. We'll do that a lot. If you want to hear more about that, one day when this is live on Zoom or Facebook and you listen to it and you come to this part, hey, make sure you comment like, hey, tell us more about your self-management system and structure. And I'll tell you guys about it. But all that said is that in this example with tenants, if I own the property myself, if I own the property and they're my tenants, I'm responsible for maintenance. So when the HVAC system stops working, I've got to pay the $600 to get the guy out there to do the work and then send me an invoice for changing air filters or whatever the case is, right? Um, but when I sell them the property on a rack, suddenly I have no maintenance costs. I don't have to pay for maintenance. All of that money that I've collected as a delta is mine. And the equity that we created is going to be paid out based on that cash flow. And so I've gotten 15,000. I got my down payment at the beginning. I got paid monthly I get paid monthly while they're owning it and paying out my equity. And then one day, more than likely, at the very end, they're gonna at some point the property is gonna increase in value enough that they might refinance. And when they refinance, they pay off any loan that I have left, and I get the end of my equity paid out, and I'm out of the deal entirely. And that is just the most amazing chef's kiss structure of creative finance and sub two, which I just love. It's like my absolute favorite thing. And so with that, this is a little bit earlier than I wanted, but I think that that was a lot, right? That was a whole lot, and it seems that we're having some little issue with the audio here, and then also the stream getting killed by the Matrix, and so I'm feeling threatened. But so what I'm gonna do here, I think I'm gonna call it for the night, right? This has been fun. I appreciate you being here, Samantha. It helps a lot to have somebody asking questions and to talk to. Um, my goal is to do this at least once a month, the 7 day long stretch, right, the midnight run. But I will be streaming again throughout the weeks, um, in the evening, early evening, especially on the weekends. I should be back here tomorrow with a specific subject that I'll get into. But I think this is going to be it for the evening. All right. So hopefully this has been valuable for you. I know that we talked about a lot, and we didn't really go deep into like the actual analysis part that was doing pretty much each night. Um, and that's fine for me, right? At the end of the day, I just want to add value. And if all the value is just going to you, Sam, like that's cool. I'm okay with that. Um, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you appreciate the opportunity to learn. And if there's anything specifically that you have in mind, if there's anything specifically that you have in mind, like you let me know, right? Drop it in here, drop it in here, drop it in Messenger, whatever the case is. I will see it, and I will. If you're the only person here, well, then that's it. That's cool. We'll just be kicking it. Oh, don't close that. Oh, do not close that. Stop it. One second. One second. Yeah, if it's just you, that's fine, right? And there's some people jumping in on Facebook and whatnot still. But like I said, the focus here is for this group in Zoom, and that's just where it is, right? That's where the people are, and that's the advantage of getting to come over to this other platform. So I appreciate you for coming. If you have questions, drop them in the comments after the fact, right? Drop them on Facebook Messenger. Either way works. I'll see them. I'll take note of them. I'll gather them all together. And I'll push that forward. If there's a conversation or a structure that you want to talk about, hey, let me know. Right? It's open book. It's all good. All right. So this has been the last midnight run for this month. For all of you who got to come by, I appreciate you. You'll start to see the little bits and pieces and gems of this conversation coming out on Facebook and Instagram, a little bit on Twitter, a little teensy beansy bit, YouTube. So please, 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 before I go, like the stream. Make sure that you check me out on Facebook. Obviously, I have my personal page, which this should be streaming from, but I also have my business page, Paris Capers Realtor, Paris Capers, Realtor. Please follow that page. What I'll do here at some point this month, maybe this weekend, in fact, I'll probably transfer all of the events that I already had scheduled in my page over to the actual, not on my profile, over to the Realtor page. Go follow me on Instagram at paris.phoneshomes, just like you see at the bottom of the stream. And then right now, there's not a lot of stuff over there, but check me out on YouTube. I have a few videos from some of the midnight runs, from some of the analysis we put forward, and you'll begin to see a lot more of this content put forward and cut out. At the end of the day, it's not perfect, but I will not let perfect get in the way of progress, you know? So I'll get better every day. And as long as you guys are coming asking questions, I will provide as much value to you as I can. So this has been Paris Capers. Thank you for coming to the Midnight Run. And we are done. Close out on, if you're on Zoom, you're going to be the last person to see me, but I'm going to close everything else out. Thank you for coming and have a great day. If I can get to the thing, that would be fantastic. That's the wrong button. Still on. Super sketchy. Oh, of course. Well, now you got a little bit extra time because the button is somewhere else. Shout out, shout out. Hey, shout out to my wife for being great. Um, yeah, I gotta end this. I guess I just gotta do it from Zoom actually, because it is streaming from Zoom. Hey, everybody, have a nice night.